In this podcast episode, Joe Rogan sits down with acclaimed screenwriter Joe Eszterhas to discuss a wide range of topics, including the origins of his iconic film Basic Instinct, his personal life experiences that have shaped his creative work, his complex relationship with Christianity, historical and cultural insights into religion, and reflections on figures like Hunter S. Thompson, Jim Hendrix, and Mark Twain. They also delve into the American immigrant experience, police militarization, and the challenges of faith and artistry in today's society. The conversation opens with Eszterhas sharing the fascinating story behind his uniquely carved cane made by the Doan people of Mali. He explains the cultural and cosmic mythology of the Doan, referencing their belief in the supreme creator Amma and the amphibious water spirits called the NMA, which descend from the Sirius star system aboard an ark-like vessel carrying humanity's ancestors. This discussion highlights the rich and mystical traditions of a culture unknown to Rogan, framing the theme of ancient origins and storytelling. Eszterhas dives into the genesis of Basic Instinct, explaining how the film's characters were inspired by his own life experiences. He recounts a formative affair with a sophisticated older woman when he was 18 and his close friendship with a cop involved in multiple shootings whose motivations intrigued him. These two dichotomous influences, the femme fatale and the morally ambiguous police officer, merged into the story of Basic Instinct, which he wrote in just 13 days in Hawaii. Throughout the process, he was heavily influenced by smoking, listening to the Rolling Stones, and personal reflection. He notes the auction sale for a record $3 million and the critical reassessment over time, including praise from feminist critics who now consider the film a post-feminist classic celebrating female sexual agency. Eszterhas refers to a twisted little man inside himself, a metaphorical figure he credits for the dark, sexual content of his writing. This companion exists alongside other inner voices, such as Mark Twain and Jesus of Nazareth, representing different facets of his personality and influences. He describes how this persona helped shape Basic Instinct and contributed to his creative output. The dynamic between his real self and the twisted little man illustrates the complexity of his artistic mindset and the internal dialogue fueling his work. The guest reveals his extensive background as a police reporter in cities like Dayton, Ohio, and Cleveland, covering shootings, uprisings, and civil rights struggles. These harrowing encounters, including witnessing a fatal shooting scene and the Glenville urban uprising, deeply influenced his worldview and storytelling. Eszterhas's fluency in Hungarian allowed him to connect with victims and communities on a personal level, reinforcing the gritty realism in his scripts. His reporting laid the foundation for many authentic scenes and themes in his filmography, such as the tensions in Big Shots and Telling Lies in America. Joe discusses his late-life conversion to Christianity and the challenges he faced integrating his faith with his work in Hollywood. He describes his recovery from stage 4 throat cancer, attributing part of his survival to prayer and spiritual support from his wife, Naomi. Despite his strong personal faith in Jesus Christ, Eszterhas struggles with institutional aspects of the Catholic Church, including its history of anti-Semitism, sexism, and doctrinal dogmatism. He explains how this tension affected his attempts to write Christian-themed scripts, which were too secular for religious financiers and too religious for secular Hollywood, preventing their production. Eszterhas offers a nuanced view of Jesus Christ, emphasizing his identity as both true man and true God, and portraying him as a Jewish zealot and freedom fighter rather than a sanitized pacifist figure. He critiques popular religious films for oversimplifying or romanticizing Jesus, contrasting this with the realism found in films like The Passion of the Christ and The Last Temptation of Christ. The guest also discusses the historical complexities surrounding Mary Magdalene and the Gnostic Gospels, noting the significant reinterpretations and omissions by traditional church doctrine. The Shroud of Turin becomes a topic of fascination as Eszterhas and Rogan explore its origins, scientific testing, and enduring mysteries. Despite carbon dating suggesting a medieval origin, the cloth's image, particularly visible as a photographic negative, has baffled researchers. They delve into theories about how the image was formed, including ultraviolet radiation bursts possibly linked to the resurrection, and discuss the religious and artistic significance of the Shroud. Eszterhas expresses an agnostic but reverent stance, saying the image moves him spiritually regardless of its authenticity. Eszterhas shares his story as a Hungarian immigrant to America, embodying the classic immigrant pursuit of opportunity despite numerous hardships. He recalls growing up poor in Cleveland, learning the language, navigating juvenile trouble, and ultimately attending college. He credits the kindness of Americans who supported him and emphasizes his deep connection to others who come seeking a better life. This heartfelt reflection touches on current immigration debates, including the complex realities faced by undocumented migrants and the socio-political dynamics that lead to exploitation and injustice. The discussion turns to contemporary political issues surrounding law enforcement, particularly the militarization of police forces and ICE operations. Both Rogan and Eszterhas express concern about masked, heavily armed officers operating with little accountability, cautioning that such precedents threaten civil liberties. They debate the role of immigration enforcement policies and the human cost to migrants, many of whom were encouraged to come to the U.S. under false promises. The guest highlights the plight of hardworking immigrants who find themselves caught between political agendas and systemic failures. A significant portion of the conversation honors Hunter S. Thompson, with Eszterhas crediting Thompson's encouragement and support as instrumental to his early success as a writer and screenwriter. They recall Thompson's irreverent style, his pioneering of gonzo journalism, and his complex personality, marked by both wild excess and deep sensitivity. Eszterhas recounts stories of their friendship, including nights out in San Francisco, their mutual love of drinking, and the infamous incident involving the Rolling Stones. They reflect on Thompson's tragic demise and lasting literary legacy as a voice of a generation, likening him to a modern-day Mark Twain. Eszterhas shares personal anecdotes from his time reporting on legendary musician Jimi Hendrix's 1968 Cleveland concert, including a humorous story about taking Hendrix and his bandmates to a Hungarian restaurant. He describes Hendrix as a kind, laid-back individual despite his wild public persona. The guest also comments on Hendrix's influence and enduring status as perhaps the greatest guitarist of all time, tragically part of the 27 Club of artists who died young, including Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison. These reflections tie into the era of cultural revolution and change that shaped both his journalistic and cinematic worldview. The episode touches on Mark Twain's legacy as a pioneering humorist and social commentator. Eszterhas praises Twain's early role as a stand-up-like performer whose lectures and writings broke new ground in American satire and social critique. He discusses Twain's lesser-known works that deal with darker themes and his enduring influence on American culture. The conversation explores Twain's wit, his rebellious spirit, and how his unique voice paved the way for contemporary figures like Hunter S. Thompson. Eszterhas candidly discusses his long struggle with alcohol and nicotine, relating how his substance use intertwined with his creative process. He explains that for him, drinking was not an inspiration, but a way to silence the relentless voices in his head. The guest details his gradual journey away from heavy drinking following health scares, including his battle with cancer, and credits his faith and wife's intervention for helping him quit dangerous habits late in life. The dialogue examines the complex relationship between creativity, addiction, and personal discipline within the artistic world. Toward the end of the conversation, Eszterhas speaks about the powerful emotional and spiritual experience of collective worship. He compares it to attending a concert, describing the energy and connection that arise from sharing faith in a communal setting. Despite his critiques of religious institutions, he emphasizes the profound impact that sincere worship and being part of a faith community can have on the human spirit. This theme resonates with the earlier discussions on his conversion and ongoing devotion to Jesus. Throughout the episode, Eszterhas reflects on the significance of storytelling and entertainment, underscoring his belief that movies, books, and performances shape how people perceive the world and offer meaningful escape. He contrasts this with the vital work of his daughter-in-law in medicine, but asserts that enhancing people's lives through art is equally important in its own way. They discuss how cultural figures like Hunter S. Thompson gave voice to societal undercurrents and the importance of authentic, courageous writers in framing the cultural conversation. The discussion also touches on the value of honesty and intuition in discerning truth and authenticity, whether in art, faith, or politics. Eszterhas and Rogan agree on the importance of a strong bullshit detector to navigate complex realities and avoid manipulation. They note that audiences can sense genuineness and that this trust is essential in meaningful communication, whether in interviews, performances, or daily life. The conversation briefly explores the broader context of societal revolutions during Eszterhas's youth and early career, including the sexual revolution and the introduction of the birth control pill in 1960. They discuss how these monumental changes affected sexual dynamics, gender relations, and cultural attitudes toward sexuality, which in turn influenced Eszterhas's work and the era's artistic output. In closing, Joe Rogan expresses his admiration for Eszterhas's gift in crafting compelling conversations that feel like friendly, deep, and inspiring dialogues. Eszterhas reciprocates the respect, recognizing Rogan's unique ability to redefine the interview format and create space for genuine connection. They part on a warm note, acknowledging the enjoyment and significance of their wide-ranging exchange.